guys, this is Guneet. In today's video, we are going to learn about how we can perform SQL queries using Google Colab. So we can perform SQL on Google Colab using SQLite. So SQLite is a very fast, it's very lightweight, self-contained, it's serverless, zero configuration and transactional database engine. So in SQLite database is stored in a single disk file and it works very good for database management, SQL commands or PyCharm operation, which means that using a code we can create a database, perform SQL commands or operations. So now let's go ahead and create a database and then we'll work on some queries, and through those queries we'll be solving these two problem statements. So looking at those problem statements, we can see that we need to create two tables. First is employees and then department. So let's get started. So our first step goes by to create the database. So for that, what we'll do first, we need to import our SQLite. So we'll write import SQLite 3. So this is the library that we need to import. So let's run this. So now that you can see that it has the cell is executed, so that means that my library has been imported. Now what I'll do, I'll again insert a cell, and now we'll write down connection is equal to SQLite dot SQLite 3 dot connect, and we'll write down test dot database. Right. So SQLite.3 connect is used to create a connection on the database test.database, right? So with that, first let's execute it. Let me just copy it and let me write it. So we'll again run this cell. So that means the cell has been executed. Now our next step goes by where we need to create our database, right? So for that, we'll write down connect. This is the database creation, right? So connect dot execute, right? And in my brackets, I'll write down. So execute, what it does is it executes a SQL statement. So I'll write here, and then I'll write down then that in syntax which we know, create table and the table name departments. First I'll create the table name departments, right? Departments, and again a bracket, right? And in my bracket, first we need to uh, give our columns. So for code, this is a integer value, right? And we need to also mention a primary key, right? So I'll write down primary key. It's a primary key, and we cannot have a null value, so we'll write down not null, right? Now comma, second column, which is the name. So this is a varchar, right? So we'll write down varchar, and with this is also not null value, comma, right? Then the third column, which is the budget, and in our budget we can a real value, right? And again it cannot be null, so I'll just declare not null, right? And this is our create table syntax. So after my, I'll write down a semicolon, and then and in this manner you can see that it is created, and right, and after that I'll just write down connection dot commit, right? And now let's see So this is just our first table, department. We also need to create a second table, right? So for that, after that, I'll also write print. So when we usually create a command, we also write down in our SQL, it also tells us if we executed that create table has been created. But in our code, we need to mention that it needs to print department table created. So it will write down departments table table created, right? And then we'll just write down this. So let's go ahead and execute this and see whether our table has been created, right? So if I run this cell, so you can see that it has given me departments table created. Now what we'll do, again our cell, and we need to dot execute. Rather than this, we'll just copy paste, right? And we can just so in this one, departments, we'll change it to employees, right? Employees, let me just scroll down. So employees, and this one is SSN number. So it's also it will be again an integer key, not null, right? Then employee name text. So in our name, we can also say text, right? Then we can have a last name also. It's also, it can be varchar. Again, not, it can be null also. But I'll write down not null, right? Then third column, which is the department, right? Department, and it's an integer and not null, right? And we'll have a column salary, which is integer, not null. So this is how we just declare our columns. So we know that we have declared our primary key in our department, right? So we just, in our second table, that primary key, if you want to call, it will be called as a foreign key. So I'll declare that as well. So what I'll write down, so constraint, right? Foreign key department code foreign key. So in this one, I have a primary key, and same I have called, but as a foreign key, right? So if we declare a primary key in another table, the same table, so we call it a foreign key, right? And again, it cannot be a null value. It does not have any null value, right? So this one is done, and we'll write down employees table created, right? So let's just execute it and see. So our both our tables has been created now, departments and employees. Now now that we have our tables, we need to insert values into our tables, right? So What will be the syntax for that? Again, we'll write down dot execute, right? And then in our, we'll write down insert into, first we'll write in departments, right? Into departments. So again, so what were the columns? Code, then we had name and budget, right? So name, comma, budget, and then values. What values do we need to add? We'll mention. So I can write down 14, comma, then what will be my department? I can write down IT, comma, and then budget is, right? So, right? So in this manner, we will fill out our values into our departments table, right? So in this manner, I have written. Now, let's just execute it. So now we will, in our departments table, I have added the values. Now I will be inserting values into my employees table. So okay, one step that I have missed here is I haven't written connection.commit, so it hasn't saved, right? This is our employees table. It's just to differentiate. If I run this, see, now I had already executed this one, so it will give me an error. So I will just again copy this and we'll run this. So you can see that it has executed. It's this particular cell is executed. Now let's go ahead and now we will be solving our test query. So for that, what we'll do is again we'll write down connect is equal to SQLite 3 dot connect to, what was it, test dot database, right? The, then we'll write down cursor is equal to, so we need to execute those queries, right? So the syntax will go by this, execute. So now in connect dot execute, in my cursor value, I'll be executing my query. So over here I'll write down, so select, so we'll just check what if values has been added into our table, star from. So first let's just check departments, right? Again, then if we need to print, like this is just our query and we cannot just go ahead and execute it, we need to write for row in cursor so that it prints every row, right? So for row in cursor, print row, right? Without this statement, we won't be able to execute it. So you can see that I have my departments table with all my values. Now again, I'll write down here cursor is equal to, for my, for me to check my employee table, let's just change this to employees, right? Again, cursor is equal to, and then I will just execute it. So you can see that my values in my departments table and my employees table are executed, and you can see those values, right? Now let's go ahead and solve. So now let's go ahead and solve our problem statement, which was, first we need to select the data of all employees that work in department this or this, right? So let's go ahead and solve first our first problem statement. So I will just, so what is our first one, right? Now to solve this problem statement, what we'll do is, again, so the problem statement is select star from employees. Now we cannot just write down, right? So again, we have to do it in this manner. So again, I'll copy paste it, and instead of in this particular thing, I'll remove this, and now I will be writing down my query here, right? So first I'll write select star from the table from employees, right? So we'll select all our columns from employees, and then we'll write down now where department in, then for my column, so it says 37 comma 77, right? So either we can use it by or, but here I am using my code in, my function in function. So, and right here I will just give my semicolon, and right. So now let's see whether this gets, so it has given me the values with the department 37 and 77, right? I hope this is clear. Now let's move on to our second problem statement, which is select the name of the departments with more than 2 employees. So we need to select the departments which have more than 2 employees. So let's just, okay, I haven't, right? Now, this is our second problem statement. So again, this is the syntax. You have to write down cursor is equal to connect dot execute, and then you can solve your, and this one is used to print our rows, right? So now here, now it says that we need to select the name of the department with more than 2 employees, right? So the syntax will go like select, first we will select, let's remove this, right? So select, so we need to select name from the departments table, right? So we'll write down departments, right? Now the condition is that where code, so the condition says that we need to select the departments where the employees are, the count of the employees is more than 2. So we'll use the count function here, right? So I'll be using a subquery because we cannot include everything in one. So we'll be using subquery and right. So encode in, and then I'll select department, right, from employees, and now the then we'll group by department. You'll use group. It's an aggregate function, right? So count. So group by is important. Group by department having count. Count of what? Everything, right? So count, I'll write down asterisk, is greater than 2, right? Because it's employees table, right? So we need to include everything, and then I'll write down semicolon, and let's just remove this space, right? So this is our problems query. So first I have select in my subquery, I have is selected by department employees table, and I have taken the count of every employee, right? So select department from employees, group by department, and having count which is more than 2, right? So employees more than 2, so we'll just use count function. Then this is a part of a subquery. Then in our main query, I have selected the name from departments, right? And we need to select the code. So let's just go ahead and execute it. So we'll see that I have got the departments IT and human resources. That means these two departments have more than 2 employees, right? So I hope the SQL queries using Google Colab is clear. Thanks for watching.